A master of manipulation, the Warmaster Horus had convinced 4 of his brother Primarchs and their Space Marine legions to join his plot to overthrow the Emperor of Mankind. But despite these successes, he knew that too many of his brothers would never betray their father. When he unleashed his forces, they would be shocked at first, and then angered, determined to bring all their strength to bear to crush his rebellion. Even one Space Marine legion represented a powerful foe. Together, the Primarchs that remained loyal could crush his uprising before it ever really began. Some, like Rogel Dorn, who had been named the Castellan of Terra, were already beyond his reach. But others could be moved like pawns by Horus's authority as Warmaster into strategic positions where they would find it difficult to respond to his rebellion or could be destroyed outright. The demands of the Great Crusade would serve as a pretense for these maneuvers. Of those Primarchs who Horus knew without question would never join him, 3 concerned him most: Roboute Guilliman of the Ultramarines, Lionel Johnson of the Dark Angels, and Sanguinius of the Blood Angels. With the exception of the Sons of Horus, no legion had conquered as many worlds, or done so as quickly, as the Ultramarines. But when the forces of Roboute Guilliman took a new world, they didn't just add it to the Emperor's realm. They also rebuilt its economy, upgraded its defenses, and established a new government whose first concern was always the people's well-being. At the same time, Guilliman's genius for administration had established an extremely efficient military machine based on his homeworld of Macragge and the surrounding realm of Ultramar. The 500 worlds of this realm supplied the 13th Legion with an uninterrupted flow of new recruits. This efficiency, combined with Guilliman's tactical skill and the brutal campaigns of the Great Crusade, had allowed the Ultramarines to become the largest of all the Legiones Astartes. When Horus had been appointed Warmaster, Guilliman had supported the decision, believing that Horus had the right mix of diplomatic and military qualities to best serve in the position. But Guilliman had never been close to the Warmaster personally. His love of order and hierarchy also made the idea of rebellion against the Emperor unthinkable for the Ultramarines Primarch. But those same traits also ensured that Guilliman would never question the orders Horus now gave him. The Warmaster ordered the Ultramarines and the Wordbearers legions to muster at the verdant world of Calth in the Galactic East. They were to eliminate an expected orc incursion into the local Viridian system. Guilliman thought the order only a political exercise, whereby Horus proved his authority over the largest of the legions as Warmaster, while giving the disgraced Wordbearers a chance to earn new glory. Completely ignorant of Horus's planned betrayal, Guilliman mustered 20 of his legion's 22 chapters on Calth. Because of the distances involved, by the time a massive Wordbearers fleet arrived at the muster point, Horus's rebellion was already well underway on the other side of the galaxy. As soon as the Wordbearers arrived, they launched a surprise attack on the Ultramarines fleet in orbit and the 13th Legion's forces on the ground. The Wordbearers savored the chance to enact revenge upon the Ultramarines for their destruction of the perfect city of Monarchia decades before. Unprepared for the betrayal, the Ultramarines took appalling casualties. At the same time, with the aid of chaos cultists and summoned demons, First Chaplain Erebus returned to his legion at last, summoned a massive new warp storm on the surface that was centered on Calth. Remembered as the Ruinstorm, it would grow over time to cut the Imperium nearly in two, sundering the eastern half of the galaxy from communication with Terra. Severing the Imperial throne world from the aid of the Ultramarines and the other loyalist legions in the eastern half of the galaxy had been the primary goal of the operation. However, the Battle of Calth was not a complete victory for the traitors. Roboute Guilliman's strategic genius allowed him to find a flaw in the Wordbearers' plan. Guilliman led a small strike force to an orbital platform that contained the Mechanicum's primary data hub for the Viridian system. Guilliman first defeated the traitor forces led by Cor Pharan, who had claimed the Void Station. the Primarch then reactivated Calth's planetary defense network by cleansing it of the computer virus the Word-Bearers had introduced at the start of their assault. The world's defenses immediately came back online and extracted a devastating toll on the Word-Bearers' vessels in orbit and their troops on the ground. The Word-Bearers' fleet turned tail and fled orbit, abandoning its Astartes on Calth as it sought to make a warp jump. As the surviving warships of the Ultramarines' fleet pursued the traitors, the Word-Bearers poisoned the Viridian Star in an attempt to destroy the entire system. The loyalists were able to prevent the sun from going nova, but the star's radiation pattern was altered, making the surface of Calth uninhabitable. The Ultramarines, Word-Bearers, and Calth civilians were forced to take refuge in the vast underground cavern cities used for manufacturing. The fighting would rage on for years there until the last of the traitors were eradicated. But almost one half of the Ultramarines' legion had been slain, and any chance of Roboute Guilliman preventing Horus from assaulting Terra was lost. While Horus knew Guilliman at least respected him, the same could not be said for another of the Primarchs he feared might stand in his way, Lionel Johnson of the Dark Angels. L. Johnson believed that Horus's appointment as Warmaster simply reflected the Emperor's love for his favorite son. There was no doubt in his mind that he would have made a better choice. Despite his brother's arrogance, Horus knew not to underestimate him. L. Johnson, or the Lion as he was better known, was renowned for a level of strategic brilliance and martial prowess rivaled among the Primarchs perhaps only by Horus. Yet he was distrusted by most of his brothers for his secretive and stoic nature. Many were not quite sure where the Lion's loyalties truly lay. To truly understand Lionel Johnson, one had to know from where he came. The Lion's gestation capsule had come to rest on Caliban, a thickly forested world inhabited by feudal settlements ruled by various orders of knights. Caliban was afflicted by the great beasts, monstrous animals tainted by the power of chaos, who constantly threatened the human population. Only the actions of the world's knights kept them at bay. The Lion had been discovered by one of these fellowships, known simply as the Order. The Order's most capable young knight, a warrior named Luther, found the young Primarch living in the wilds and captured him alive. Named Lionel Johnson, or the Lion, son of the forest, in the local dialect, the Primarch rapidly assimilated the local culture. With Luther as his constant companion and best friend, the Lion soon demonstrated the extraordinary talents as a warrior and strategist that eventually allowed him to become the leader of the Order. The Lion came to love Caliban and its people. Leading the Knights of the Order, the Primarch undertook quests that spread his fame across the world. It was not long before his fortress monastery was bursting with new recruits. With the manpower before him, the Lion and Luther petitioned the leaders of the Order to launch a crusade to eliminate all the great beasts from Caliban once and for all. They agreed, and in time, the Lion and Luther managed to forge alliances with all the other knightly orders of Caliban. Under their leadership, in less than a decade, the Knights of Caliban slew the last of the beasts, freeing their people from a horror that had lasted for millennia. In gratitude, the Order named the Lion their Supreme Grand Master, which also made him the effective ruler of all Caliban. This recognition made Luther jealous, creating a rift between the two that would only grow and one day bear bitter fruit for the Dark Angels and the Imperium. Not long after the elimination of the great beasts, the Emperor's fleet arrived at Caliban. The Master of Mankind immediately recognized the Lion as another of his missing sons. L. Johnson was given command of the 1st Legion of Space Marines, which he renamed the Dark Angels after the heroes of an old Calibanite legend. From then on, all of the Dark Angels recruits came from Caliban, and its feudal culture soon left its stamp upon the Legion. The First Legion proved to be one of the most effective Imperial forces during the Great Crusade. They stood in the first rank of the Legiones Astartes in the number of worlds brought into Imperial compliance, and were often used to crack the most difficult opponents. Such a powerful force, led by a man who obviously saw Horus as a rival, represented a real threat to the Warmaster's plans. Unsure of his brother's true loyalty, and unwilling to risk requesting his aid, Horus decided to bog the Dark Angels down in a difficult campaign. He ordered the First Legion to bring the worlds of the Gordian League into Imperial compliance. The Gordian League was a technologically advanced human confederation near Caliban that ruled a series of extremely well-defended planets called Shield Worlds. The Lion gladly undertook the difficult operation to bring territory so near his beloved homeworld into the Imperial fold. But the combat proved so deadly that it required all the resources of the First Legion. Even when the Lion later learned of Horus's rebellion, he knew it would take 8 months before he could complete the campaign. To keep the Dark Angels pinned in place after their victory over the Gordians and protect his supply lines, Horus later ordered Conrad Kurz, the Primarch of the Night Lords Legion, to draw the Lion's warriors away to the Thramis sector in the Galactic East. The birth of the Ruinstorm at Calth completed their isolation on the Imperial frontier. Lionel Johnson and his Dark Angels would never face the Warmaster in battle during the horrors to come, though Johnson and Kurz would repeatedly clash in person, and for a time, the Lion would serve as the jailer of his treacherous brother. The Night Lords Legion, shattered by the confrontation with the Dark Angels, never fully recovered from what Imperial historians would later call the Thramis Crusade. Of all the brothers he knew he would betray, the most difficult personally for Horus was Sanguinius, Primarch of the Blood Angels. The Angel and Horus had become close during the years of the Great Crusade. It was said by their brothers that Horus and Sanguinius were closer to each other than any of the other Primarchs. Sanguinius's council had convinced the Warmaster to accept his father's suggestion and change the name of the Luna Wolves to the Sons of Horus. The Angel had argued that as the first among equals, Horus had earned the high honor of having his legion named after him. Sanguinius was charismatic and an excellent judge of character, as skilled an administrator as Roboute Guilliman, and yet known to match both Horus and Lionel Johnson in raw combat ability. When Horus needed counsel, he turned first to Sanguinius, who held more sway over the Warmaster's thinking than any save the Emperor himself. As he lay dying on Davin's moon, even Horus had admitted to himself that Sanguinius might have made a better choice for Warmaster. He believed that of all the Primarchs, Sanguinius was most like their father in the sheer variety of his talents. But after his corruption by chaos, it was for these same reasons that Horus plotted to destroy his favorite brother. Sanguinius alone might be able to defeat his rebellion. Even worse, if the Angel turned to chaos, he might even become a rival for the Dark God's favor as their chosen champion. So as Horus prepared his great betrayal, he believed he knew how to end the threat of the angelic Primarch. For the Warmaster knew that Sanguinius' seeming perfection hid a monstrous flaw. Sanguinius had emerged from the warp on the moon of Baal Secundus. This world was a post-apocalyptic desert, encased in a shroud of nuclear fallout that was a product of old Night's terrible conflicts. Sanguinius had been discovered by one of the moon's feral human tribes, who were known as the Blood. Alone of all the Primarchs, Sanguinius possessed a pair of angel-like wings that sprouted from his back and were why his people called him the Great Angel. Whether these were a deliberate genetic gift of the Emperor or a random mutation that resulted from the high levels of radiation is unknown. But whatever the cause, Sanguinius' appearance led to his receiving the worship and leadership of the Blood. His abilities as a Primarch and the development of psychic powers that allowed him to see the future greatly aided his chosen people. He led them in ferocious battles against hordes of vicious mutants who had long troubled the far smaller tribes of unaltered humans. By the time the Emperor arrived at Baal Secundus, having detected another of his sons, Sanguinius had destroyed the mutants and united all the peoples of the moon under his rule. The Emperor had disguised himself and infiltrated an address Sanguinius gave to his followers. The Master of Mankind witnessed his son give a speech that displayed both humility and courage. But Sanguinius had already seen the Emperor in his visions and immediately recognized him. He fell to his knees at once and pledged eternal allegiance to his father on the spot. Sanguinius became the Primarch of the 9th Legion, the Blood Angels, and the best warriors of his tribe were soon being taken as new recruits. The Blood Angels under Sanguinius began winning victory after victory for the Emperor, driving the frontiers of the Imperium ever outward. But during one campaign with the Lunawolves to reclaim the world of Melchior from aliens known as the Nephilim, Horus had come across an astonishing scene. He discovered Sanguinius executing one of his own Space Marines. The shamefaced angel had explained that there was a terrible flaw within his genome that he had passed on to his Astartes. Over time, a Blood Angel's sanity could degrade. They could be consumed with such an overriding need to kill that their humanity was stripped away until all that was left was a feral beast. They would succumb to a constant rage, satiated only by sometimes literally drinking the blood of their foes. This flaw was called the Red Thirst, and the only cure for it was death. Horus promised that his brother's terrible secret was forever safe with him. But years later, as he prepared his rebellion, Horus saw how he could use the Red Thirst to his advantage. The Chaos Gods and their demonic allies made clear that they wished to convert Sanguinius to their cause, using the Red Thirst as a way to transform him into a servant of the blood god Khorne. As the representatives of the Dark Gods, the Word-Bearers presented the Warmaster with a plan to corrupt Sanguinius through a campaign in the Signus cluster, but Horus refused. He told Erebus that his brother must die, for he could never be turned. But in truth, both he and the Word-Bearer's chaplain knew that he feared the angel might become his rival for the Chaos God's affection. Horus sent a Word-Bearer's detachment to Sanguinius with orders that he and his legion clear the Signus cluster. The Warmaster claimed the system's people had fallen under the control of an old enemy, the tyrannical alien Nephilim. Horus further set the bait by providing intelligence that indicated that the Nephilim possessed technology that could be used to cure the Red Thirst. With no reason to doubt his brother, Sanguinius walked blindly into the trap. In reality, Horus had already sent one of his Serpent Lodge priests from Davin to unleash a vast demonic horde upon the Signus cluster's people. When they arrived, the Blood Angels discovered that the entire system had been claimed by the demons of the Warp, and their psychic assault drove most of the non-Space Marine members of the Imperial Expeditionary Fleet insane. After the Blood Angels' flagship crashed on Cygnus Prime as a result of the sudden madness of its crew, the Loyalists were assaulted by hordes of demons and chaos cultists commanded by two greater demons, Kyrus the Perverse of Slaanesh and Kabanda of Khorne. When Sanguinius was knocked unconscious, and his legs were broken by the infernal assault of Kabanda, his entire legion was consumed by the Red Thirst for the first time. The furious Astartes carried all before them, while the Blood Angels' librarians used their powers in violation of the Edicts of Nicaea to heal and revive their fallen Primarch. Once awakened, Sanguinius struck a mighty blow against Kabanda, banishing the Bloodthirster back to the Warp. Kyrus the Perverse met much the same fate, and was decapitated by Sanguinius in his rage, but not before the Blood Angels had killed every demon and cultist on the planet. But the angel, despite all temptations, had proven as incorruptible as Horus had warned. Unlike the Ultramarines and the Dark Angels, the Blood Angels had gained a complete victory. but they were still engaged on Signus Prime when Horus began his rebellion and unable to aid Terra. The Warmaster was enraged when he learned Sanguinius had survived. Erebus had the audacity to blame his change of plan for the failure. In return, Horus flayed the skin from the word-bearer's face with his own hands. If Sanguinius' fate left Horus furious, the reports from Prospero made him smile. Just as the Chaos Gods had predicted, his message to Leman Russ had led the Wolf King to become the executioner of Magnus the Red rather than his judge. Determined to accept the Emperor's punishment for his violation of the Edicts of Nicaea, Magnus had refused to warn his 1,000 sons of the coming retribution. He had refused to enter the battle, even as the Space Wolves made planetfall and laid waste to the capital city of Tizca. But when all but 1,000 of his Space Marines had been slain, and his beloved libraries were reduced to smoking ruins, Magnus finally gave in to his rage. Believing the Emperor had betrayed him, he furiously engaged Russ in personal combat, unleashing all the sorcerous power at his disposal. But even sorcery proved no match for the fury of the Wolf King. Just as Leman Russ was about to strike the final blow and end the brother he believed to be an abomination, Magnus called out for help to Tzeentch, who had long been his hidden patron. The Changer of the Ways triggered a final ritual Magnus and his sons had prepared. The Crimson King and all of his remaining 1,000 sons were taken into the Eye of Terra, to a new homeworld later named the Planet of the Sorcerers. From there, Magnus contacted Horus. When the traitors moved on Terra, Magnus the Red and the 1,000 sons would be with them. They would have their vengeance on the Emperor, who had destroyed all they held dear. Through gambits of misdirection and treachery, Horus had overcome the threat to his rebellion posed by those Primarchs who would never support his cause. But even his skills could not easily remove those Space Marines in his legion and those of his supporters who remained loyal to the Emperor. The membership of the warrior lodges instituted in the legions at Lorgar's urging could identify who would support his rebellion. But removing the loyalists threatened to destroy the very legions Horus needed to conquer his father's empire. It was then that fate, or perhaps chaos, intervened. The Warmaster received word that the planetary governor of the world of Istvan III had risen in rebellion. Horus ordered the World Eaters, the Death Guard, and the Emperor's Children legions to meet his own sons of Horus in the Istvan system. Perhaps he could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The hidden plots and backroom manipulations were over. It was time for the era of blood and betrayal to begin.